We are definitely in that time, man. You know, one of the more controversial areas that comes up as well when we think of Abraham is to deal with what I would call is maybe the elephant in the room for people who are Bible based, is to find him in Islam. So, what are you guys' thoughts on the appearance of Abraham in Islam? And I'll begin with highlighting the Muslim idea that the Kaaba in Mecca was not a house of worship simply built by Ishmael, but it was built by Abraham and Ishmael. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
You know, it's interesting you bring that up, and I have some familiarity with it, not extensive understanding of it. And Ibrahim in the Islamic tradition, of course, is one of the first Muslims, from what I understand, due to his submission, right? The historicity of it, whether or not we can account for Abraham building the Kaaba with him, you know, I have no to say of that. I know I've heard that is a place where he actually ascended from, if what I understand as well,
Right.
that an ascent that Abraham had leaving this dimension from that place in Mecca. So I thought it was more attributed to that as opposed to him building it. However, you know, I know he prefigures as a very powerful figure in the Islamic history, and they recognize him in his observance of Torah, though. You know, that's one thing that Islam does. They recognize how Torah came through Abraham as a Hebrew, you know, so they do attribute Torah, right, as it's said in the Arabic, to the Abrahamic bloodline. And so that bloodline is so important to understand. Again, going back to what Akot Naka was saying. But yeah, I do know that he's a very important figure. You know, he is their father as well through Ishmael. And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, that's I mean, it's relevant. And we talked about him being the father of these monotheistic faiths. So, you know, it's just what light is he truly painted in is what we have to truly understand relative to, you know, his spiritual legacy.
Absolutely. You know, religious people, which a lot of people are, even the people say, I don't got a religion, I got a way of life. Follow them for 24 hours, you'd be like, Negro, you was a whole religionist. Stop it, right? Everything about you is religion, right? So what religious people tend to do, right? I'm going to be a little more transparent than I usually am on this particular topic. What religious people tend to do is be very dismissive of other, not just worldly views, but spiritual points of view, right? So without any real invasive research into the matter, you'll find a lot of people that simply believe in the Bible are completely dismissive of the very notion that Abraham did anything with Ishmael that was great, that could be remembered, much less building, you know, a house of worship. Many people also believe that Islam is completely uninspired as a result, right? So I think that a lot of the ways that we approach it are not healthy to real study and research, right? When you walk into a religious setting, a synagogue, understand it. You have your religious garment on, you have your religious hat on, you have your turban on, right? When we're speaking from a place of history and history alone, or history first, then you can't be biased. You also can't be emotionally dismissive towards what could be a truth. So I want to offer something that might be a little controversial in a moment, right? When I say that in Islam, they teach that Abraham built the Kaaba as a house of worship with Ishmael, and much later, even much later than the life of Ishmael, this place was later turned into a center of idolatry. But in Islam, they acknowledge that it originally was not. So today, many Muslims celebrate the Kaaba today and make annual pilgrimages there, because for several centuries, they have abolished all traces of the idolatry that was brought there. And they state that they have raised this place back to an estate where Abraham and Ishmael had originally presented and built it. And I want to ask you guys just for a second, just thinking outside the box for a moment. What would some of your thoughts be upon that from anything you know in history or in religion? What would be your thoughts about that?
Well, go ahead. Okay. When you first posed it, I mean, the first thing I thought, I was thinking about, Ishmael and Isaac, and that there is a connection through Abraham, but then there's also what I would view as would be like two contrary positions, Ishmael and Isaac. And then when you look at Ishmael, with his having 12 children, I believe, having 12 tribes of his own, that kind of mirrors later Yaakov and the 12 tribes of Israel. So I guess my first thought is that it would be opposing views. But what I do know from the Torah is that Abraham loved Ishmael, that he loved him so much that he pleaded to Yah about Ishmael and about him taking that, this is my son. And if I was on the Arabic side, or if I was on the Muslim side, I would look at that, and then I could see them saying, see, Abraham and Ishmael, and then we're going to tell our perspective of their relationship. And I could almost kind of look at that the same way where Sister Malka had brought up the Anunnaki from the Sumerians' point of view. The Anunnaki were good, right? They're just helping humanity. And then, from a more of a Torah standpoint, you're going to say, well, those just fallen angels, and they were wicked, So great question. I guess I could see where, because of the love that Abraham had for Ishmael, I could see there being, some form of, what's the history between his father and son. And, it's maybe not the Hebrews' job to tell the story, but if you're a Arab, if you're a Muslim, this is our job to tell that story. So, I could definitely see it. I don't know if I maybe rock all the way with it, but I could definitely see it if I just step back and, like as you said, kind of move your biases out the way.
Absolutely. There are some people that go into the esoterics of the cube in Islam, and even as it appears in esoteric settings within the culture of Torah, and there are many cross references that we actually can see. Just understanding the geometry of the actual house. So I want to say this, and again, I think it's controversial, but we're not afraid of controversy. We should never be, especially if we're doing the due diligence to do the work. I think that it's not far-fetched of an idea that Abraham may have built the Kaaba as a house of worship for the one and true God alone with Ishmael. Why? Because in the Bible, we see that it was on Abraham's heart and on his mind that Ishmael would receive the blessing of the Almighty and that be considered his heir in terms of the covenant. That the covenant between God and Abraham that would extend to Abraham's progeny, his children, would come through Ishmael. So we know from the Bible's narrative that he wanted to promote Ishmael as being the vanguard of the covenant. We literally see that in the text. We also see in the text that all of the patriarchs built altars for the Almighty. Right? So we know based on what the text is saying that these men built altars. Who's to say that they didn't have ideas of building a house of worship for the Creator? And who's to say what the Kaaba originally functioned as?
Right, that's true.
Right. So in Islam, of course, they're going to fully develop the idea and say that the Kaaba was a house of worship that was built by Abraham and Ishmael. But think about this, right? Instead of dismissing it, think about this. The house of God in Jerusalem started as an altar that the patriarchs built in that region. So just like the Bible demonstrates that the patriarch Abraham built altars throughout the land towards the Creator, who is to say that he did not build an altar in that region for the Creator? Who's to say that? I mean, as a scholar, we can't be dismissive of a thing because of our religious biases, because that will block you from the truth.
Right.
Right. So you guys jump.
And I would say, I know for a fact, Abraham, and I believe it might have been Morah Malka that brought up the other children. I know for a fact because it says in the Torah that Yah's like, I'm gonna bless him and I'm gonna show him what I'm gonna do, because he will teach his children, plural, my laws, my statutes, my commandments. He will teach them. So for sure, Abraham is going to enlighten all of his children about, the one and only Most High. So he taught Ishmael,
undeniably,
for a fact. And what Ishmael did, or maybe not even what Ishmael, maybe what Ishmael's descendants after him did, that might be a different story. But for
even
fact,
the house of God, at some point, people try to turn into a center of idolatry. That now give a later generation to correct the history and say, no, it was always idolatry.
Yeah.
We got to use our brains.
Yeah. I think Torah's clear that he taught all of his children the ways of Hashem.
And let me lean in on that a little. Even in the book of Joshua, it talks about Abraham going to visit Ishmael after he was sent out.
Come on.
He encounters his wife at the time.
And where does Ishmael live?
Right. He visited him. He didn't get off the camel because he told his wife, "Sir, I'm not gonna get off the camel if I don't see Ishmael, so don't trip, right? Don't trip, I'm good." And so with his wife at that time being a rusty peg in the tent, he's like, tell my son when he comes back to get rid of that rusty peg, so he encounters Ishmael after he's sent out. So that lets you know that there was interaction, there was interface with him, right? And in having that, Abraham is imparting instruction to his son. He's imparting.
Come on. As you said, as a king, as a prophet, and as a high priest.
Correct.
Abraham, going back to where his son now settles in the region of Arabia, it's going to be on Abraham's mind this one truth. If my son does not erect a house of learning for the word and teaching of God to continue and spread in this region, then they are doomed to possible idolatry. So it stands to reason that it makes perfect sense that upon Abraham visiting, that he would want to help them to construct a house of learning towards the true and the living Creator, because we know throughout our history that having a house of worship for the Creator is a staple towards that glue that binds the culture, the history, and our heritage. We know these things.
That's it. And it's so interesting you bring up Islam, because what Islam is saying is like Israel corrupted the Torah. They've gone astray from Torah. Turn back to Torah. And once we turn back to Torah, their alignment with us is going to be offended. It's going to be natural, but it's like we have to play our role. We have to do our part as Israel. And Ishmael and his people are in alignment with the will of Yah. If they're following Quran the way that the Quran is entitled for them to walk, as prescribed for them to walk, as long as we're walking in our prescriptions, they're going to walk in their prescriptions. And guess what? That's how this oneness is going to be about, because they recognize Israel. They recognize Torah. They understand the covenant. They understand it.
Right. I had to go fact check right quick. So it was in Genesis 18 and 17. And Hashem said, "Shall I conceal from Abraham what I do? And Abraham is surely to become a great and mighty nation. For all the nations of the earth shall bless themselves by him, for I have loved him. For he will command his children and his household after him, that they may keep the way of Hashem, doing charity and justice, in order that Hashem might then bring upon Abraham that which is spoken of him." This time only child he has is Ishmael. And in the Baal HaTurim, they say that when it says, "For he will command his children, Asher Yetzua et Banav," that the last letters of that phrase spelled Torah.
Come on. Come on.
He's not so within the text, they're telling us that he's going to teach all of his children in his house the Torah.
Yes.
That's heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Now see Ariel put in the chat room. Abraham sent out all his sons with gifts. If you know,
you know.
You
know.
know.
In biblical Hebrew, there's about 2 words that are mainly used in the Bible to denote a gift. One denotes an intangible gift, as if like me sharing wisdom with you. That's a gift, but it's not tangible. You can't hold it. It's intangible. It's an idea. Then there's that physical gift, right? That's a minka, right? Tribute. It's translated a number of ways, but the 2 main ways that minka in Hebrew is translated as a tribute, something tributary that you're presenting, or a gift. But that's a physical gift, like a tribute. Somebody offering tribute to someone is a physical gift. The word used in Genesis 25:5, what states that Abraham gave gifts to the sons of the concubines, is the Hebrew word matanot. That word denotes an intangible gift, as in wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. So if he gave wisdom, understanding, and knowledge to the sons of the concubines, then what the hell you think he gave to Ishmael, one son he wanted over the covenant even before Isaac?
So let me pick up on that, right?